The next topic I'd like to talk to you about is tools. Now, before we get into the actual CEH material and we start hacking things, it's a good idea to talk about some of the tools you may see and you may use out in the field and in your studies for the CEH. Now, there's lots of hacker tools out there, no question about that, and you can find them in all kinds of flavors. You can find them in Linux, there are Windows hacker tools out there are Mac tools, there are even tools specific to different flavors of Unix, BSD, and so forth. A lot of these tools are single-purpose tools. They only do one thing and they do one thing well. But there's a lot of multi-purpose tools out there that we're seeing these days, tools that do a little bit of everything. There are tools that will scan a network, discover its vulnerabilities, and even start exploiting those vulnerabilities. There's a lot of commercial tools out there that are all-in-one packages, things like Core Impact and Canvas and Metasploit Pro and things like that. But you'll also see open source tools out there that are free for you to use, and those are just as good. In some cases, you may have to use 2 or 3 open source free tools to get the bang that you might get out of a huge commercial software package, but that's okay. The one good thing about the CEH is half of it's about theory and how to hack something and test your knowledge. The other half's about tools. Now, since there are thousands and thousands of tools out there, there's no way we could cover every single tool that you could see on the CEH exam or even in real life. So we're going to touch a few tools that relate to each topic that we talk about. In some cases, these might be the best of breed tools that everybody uses, and in some cases, these might be tools that we have found that may be useful to you that maybe are a little bit more obscure or a little older. That's the other thing, too, I'd like to tell you, is don't get wrapped around the axle about a tool that's brand new. You're not only going to be attacking brand new operating systems. You're not just going to be attacking Windows 7 and 8 or the latest distribution of Linux. You will find yourself attacking operating systems and applications that are older. Just because you may have upgraded to the latest version of Windows or Linux doesn't mean the rest of the world has. So you will attack and see Windows XP out there still. You will see Windows NT4 out there in some rare cases. You'll see older versions of Linux and different older distributions out there. So it's good to have these tools in your toolbox because some of these tools really are suited for older operating systems and older applications. Some of the newer tools don't necessarily do the job as the older ones do. That's why sometimes you'll see me using tools in Windows XP, for example, because the tool is still effective and still does its job. You'll also find that in a lot of cases, having the latest and greatest operating system to run your tools off of may or may not be a good idea. For example, there are differences in the Windows XP TCP/IP stack versus the Windows 7 and Windows 8 TCP/IP stacks, and also how different security features and functions are implemented. It's much easier to run a hacker tool off of Windows XP than it is Windows 8, simply because Windows 8 is a little bit more secure and prevents you from doing some of the things you might need to do to run a hacker tool. So, don't necessarily rely on just Windows 7 or 8 if you're going to run Windows tools. Now that actually brings me to another point of discussion. Which is better, Linux or Windows or what? Well, that actually begs another question. Which is the best tool? Well, the answer to that is there's not one. Now, everybody has their favorite tools, and everybody learned on a particular tool. Some people learned on Backtrack Linux. Some people learned on Windows. Some people learned on the old version of Nessus, the command line version, and some people used the newer version. So what's the best one? The right tool is the one that works for you, that does what you need it to do. And you'll hear hackers argue all the time on blogs and websites and in coffee rooms about what's the best tool to use. And there's a big conception in the hacker community that if you don't know Linux and you don't know the hard-to-use command line tools, then you're not a true hacker. Well, I can tell you that my personal philosophy is that computers were made to make our lives simpler, not harder. And if I can conduct a pen test using tools that are automated and will do what I need them to do very quickly and still do the job, then I may go that route sometimes. Obviously, there's times when you're going to need to use more advanced or complex tools that may require a long command line string in order to get the job done. And that's okay. Learn how to use all of these tools equally. Learn how to make them work for you. In some cases, you may have no choice but to use older tools if you're attacking an older operating system or an older application. So don't get discouraged if you see me running tools off of Windows XP sometimes, because I also use Backtrack Linux. I also use Windows 7. It really depends upon what I'm trying to do against the target, and in the case of this course, it depends upon what I'm trying to teach you. So understand that we're not going to cover every single tool that you probably know about. Understand that sometimes we're going to be using simpler tools, maybe GUI-related tools. Sometimes we'll be using the command line. Sometimes we'll be using Linux, and sometimes Windows. So having said that, I wanted to get that out of the way so you understand the use of tools in hacking. Again, the best tool is the tool that does the job right and works for you. And you'll find frequently that there are several tools that do the job equally. And at that point, it really depends upon what you're more comfortable using. If you're a Windows user, then by all means, find a good Windows tool that works. If you're a Linux user or a command line junkie, then definitely learn the command line switches to get your tool to work for you. So, in the next session, we're going to actually take a look at a couple of these hacking tools, particularly Backtrack Linux.